Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating idea. What if an ancient allegory about an olive tree was actually a blueprint for the entire history of the American continent? So, can an ancient text really predict the course of a whole continent? Well, the interpretation we're looking at today says absolutely yes. It argues this allegory is more than just a story. It's basically a prophetic map of America's history, kicking off right around 1492. All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with the allegory itself, then connect it to America's ancient roots. We'll look at the divine plan for preservation, how new branches were grafted in after 1492, and finally, what the whole point of this harvest was. Okay, so first things first. To get this, we've got to understand the core symbols of this allegory of the vineyard. The main symbol, the big one, is the tame olive tree. Now, in this allegory, that tree stands for the house of Israel. You can think of it as God's covenant people, from the Old Testament.
Okay, so if the tree is a people, where in the world is the vineyard planted? Let's figure out the setting of this whole thing.
And here's where it gets really interesting. According to this interpretation, the roots of the tree aren't a people at all. They're the land of America itself, a place believed to have its own divine covenant attached to it. So who were the original branches on these American roots? The text points to the family of Lehi, who supposedly came over from Jerusalem way back around 600 BC. So yeah, long before the events we're about to get into.
All right, now we're getting to the absolute core of this whole idea. It all comes down to a single verse, Jacob 5:54. This is where a problem is identified and a divine plan to fix it is laid right out.
And the first thing that verse tells us is that the roots are yet alive. What does that mean? Well, it means the covenant tied to the land of America is still considered good, still viable, and ready for a new purpose, even after all that time. So, there's the plan in a nutshell. To preserve those living roots, you take branches from the main tree and graft them in. It's like a divine intervention to save the plant. So, you might be asking, who exactly are these new branches? This interpretation identifies them as Gentiles from Europe, people who weren't born into the house of Israel, but who are considered part of that same tame olive tree through their own faith and covenants. Okay, now here's where the rubber really meets the road. This is how the allegory gets mapped onto a historical timeline, starting right after 1492. So that whole idea of grafting, the source says this isn't just a metaphor, it's history. It starts with Columbus arriving in 1492, then it continues through the 16 and 1700s with colonization by Spain, France, and England. This whole period, right up to about 1830, is seen as that grafting process in action.
And what's really important to this interpretation is that both groups, the original Lamanite branches already in America and the new Gentile branches coming from Europe, are seen as coming from the same place. They both originate from that same mother tree, the house of Israel.
Now, this idea of Gentiles being grafted in isn't totally out of left field, theologically speaking. The source points to other scriptures to back this up, like this verse from Romans, which uses that exact same language, grafting, to talk about how non-Israelites can become part of the covenant through their faith. And it doesn't stop there. The very next verse, Jacob 5:55, is interpreted as the green light, the command to actually do it. And some see this as lining up perfectly with the major expansion that followed, especially with the British Empire, which, well, it carried these branches all over the world. So, why all the trouble? Why this huge, centuries-long process of grafting branches from one place to another? Well, that brings us to the ultimate goal of the harvest. What was this all for? This whole thing is seen as a very deliberate three-step plan. Step 1, preserve those American roots by bringing in new branches. Step 2, use those new branches to strengthen the entire tree. And step 3, get that nourished, healthy tree to finally produce good fruit. So what is this good fruit they're talking about? In this view, it's the restoration of the gospel in America. The whole point of this centuries-long historical process was to prepare the ground, so to speak, for that to happen. So when you look at it this way, history gets a complete reframe. It suggests that major world events weren't just random occurrences. Instead, they're seen as part of a divine arrangement, all designed to prepare a specific land and its people for a spiritual harvest. So, in the end, this whole interpretation is about finding purpose in history. It's a powerful idea, and it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. one that goes way beyond this specific story. What does it actually mean for any nation, or any of us for that matter, to bring forth good fruit?